In Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, the show has quietly done something pretty bold. It's taken the character who essentially fills Sheldon's old narrative function, the voice of logic, innocence, and grounded observation, and put them through an emotional trauma that Sheldon himself never experienced. Jim Parsons' Sheldon Cooper, across both The Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon, was always shielded from certain emotional blows. Sure, he faced loss, confusion, awkwardness, and relationship challenges, but the writing always kept him at a distance from the ugliest parts of family drama. He was allowed to stay in this bubble of intellectual focus where the world could be chaotic around him but rarely ever to him. But in First Marriage, that protective bubble doesn't exist anymore. The show's new narrative center, essentially Sheldon's replacement, has to shoulder emotional weight Sheldon never had to face. They're forced to navigate chaos, conflict, and instability coming directly from the people they love. And that difference says a lot about how the franchise is evolving. The reason Sheldon never took on these traumas is simple. His character was written to observe, not absorb. He was the person pointing out inconsistencies, misunderstanding emotions, or delivering blunt commentary that broke tension. Even when his father died, a major moment in young Sheldon, the story still framed it in a way that kept Sheldon emotionally insulated. The grief passed through him in a detached, filtered way that fit his personality. He didn't have to confront betrayal, adult drama, or emotional manipulation the same way other characters did. But this new character in First Marriage, the spiritual successor to Sheldon's point of view role, doesn't get that shield. Instead, they're thrown directly into the storm created by Georgie and Mandy's messy, unpredictable marriage dynamic. They see the conflict, the strain, the lies, the financial pressure, and the emotional instability firsthand. And unlike Sheldon, who always had a built-in emotional escape route through his intellect, this character feels it. They aren't allowed to retreat into theory or routines, they have to live with the consequences. This shift is actually one of the strongest indications that First Marriage is trying to carve out its own identity. It's not replicating young Sheldon's structure. It isn't building another story where the observer character stands untouched in the middle of everyone else's chaos. Instead, the show is forcing its new central figure to confront the discomfort and confusion that come from watching the adults around you make mistakes. The trauma isn't distant or abstract. It's personal, immediate, and messy. What makes this especially interesting is how it contrasts with what fans know about Sheldon's future. We already know he grows into someone who views emotions almost like a foreign language. He talks about his family with a mixture of detachment and selective memory. And young Sheldon gave us a glimpse of why. But this new character? They're being shaped in real time by instability. They're responding to tension with vulnerability, not theory. They're learning about relationships not by watching from a distance, but by getting caught in the fallout. There's something incredibly human about that. It also raises bigger questions about how this trauma will shape their personality moving forward. Unlike Sheldon, whose life path was always defined by intellectual certainty, this character may grow into someone who carries emotional scars, someone who remembers what it felt like when the family around them fell apart. That alone gives them a depth Sheldon never really had. What's also worth noting is that the trauma isn't used for shock value. It's not dramatic for the sake of drama. It's grounded, subtle, and painfully believable. That's why it hits harder. It's not about witnessing a death, like Sheldon's off-screen tragedy. It's about witnessing emotional erosion, the kind that happens slowly, silently, and usually behind closed doors. That kind of trauma shapes people in ways they don't even recognize until years later. In a way, First Marriage is finally showing the kind of family impact that young Sheldon could never fully explore because it had to protect Sheldon's established personality arc. But with a new central figure, the writers have freedom. They can dig into emotional realism. They can show how a child or young teen internalizes instability. They can let pain actually change someone. Ultimately, this is what makes the show feel more grounded than expected. It's not just filling the Sheldon-shaped gap with another quirky, precocious character. It's giving that character a more difficult, more emotionally honest story, one Sheldon himself never got. And whether fans like this direction or not, It proves the franchise is finally willing to explore the emotional complexity it avoided for years.